This morning, we introduce you to Kareem Rosser, a kid who grew up surrounded by poverty and violence in one of the most challenging neighborhoods in America and rose to unprecedented heights. His memoir, Crossing the Line, at times reads like it's almost too hard to believe, and sometimes you have to put it down because the details are so difficult. But stick with it, and you'll find what may be the perfect version of the American dream come true. Why polo?
Wow, that's a good question. Why polo? I don't know. Polo chose me.
Kareem Rosser knows he doesn't look like what most people think of when they consider the ultimate sport of the elite. He wasn't raised rich or with almost any opportunities, except one.
You know, the only place I ever felt free was when I came to the stables.
His story, Crossing the Line, starts in West Philadelphia, a neighborhood where violence and addiction surrounded him, including at home.
The way you talk about your mom in this book is unvarnished. I mean, you don't leave much out.
Yeah, no, it was important for me to talk about our struggles, but also her struggles as a young mom. You know, my mom had her first child when she was 14.
With little supervision, Rosser and his 5 siblings often missed school. One day, his older brothers, David and Jabbar, wound up in a park nearby and found this, a barn full of horses and a woman named Leslie Heiner.
Is this a therapy program or a sports program?
It's a little bit of both. This style you want on her?
For nearly 3 decades, Heiner has been running Work to Ride, which gives kids like Rosser a chance.
Kareem Rosser looking on the near side for that ball.
It's a team sport, and they can pretty much, when they take the reins and they go, all of that teenage energy just kind of goes with them, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
The kids agree to stay in school and help at the stables. In return, they get to learn the sport of kings.
you want to try and match kids to the horses, you know, with their personalities, and horses all have personalities.
He must be being good because I'm here.
Nah, he was okay yesterday.
And then what I try to do is to, you know, have the kids, you know, have a certain connection with a certain horse, and a lot of times that progresses.
Kareem Rosser was hooked immediately, in part because he was paired with a horse that changed his life.
So this is the famous Cholo.
This is the famous Cholo.
What was it about the two of you that made such a great match?
I think Cholo just understood me. I was always a very timid kid for a while, a very timid rider.
Spurred by the chance to ride, along with Heiner's instruction, Rosser began to excel in sports and academics. But he was still surrounded by heartbreak. His best friend and fellow rider, a girl named Mecca, was murdered along with her parents in 2003.
What struck me most was the fact that, you know, she was just a 14-year-old girl. And, you know, that could happen to me too, that I was not invincible. And, you know, that, you know, people who were out there murdering people weren't just murdering adults, they were also murdering kids.
I got her. All right, Tilly, do good, babes.
Not long after that, Rosser's brother and polo partner at the time, Jabbar, left Work to Ride for good, pulled back into the bottom, the West Philly neighborhood that is so hard to escape. Kareem stuck it out and eventually got into the Valley Forge Military Academy, where he was pushed to new limits, and by a few kids who still didn't believe he belonged. He shares one of those stories in the book about a bigoted schoolmate.
What did he say to you?
If I remember correctly, I was called the N-word and some other very just, you know, terrible racial slurs. Eventually, I lost it. I told him to meet me in our dorm room, and, you know,
You shattered his nose.
Yeah, I shattered his nose, and he was probably one of the nicest kids at that school after that. And I'm not lying, and I'm not joking about that.
I believe you. I believe you. It's the neighborhood where you grew up.
Yeah, West Philly, where I spent majority of my childhood, where I would travel from, you know, this neighborhood to the barn.
Rosser's drive on the polo field accelerated, and in 2011 came the big breakthrough. He became part of the first all-African-American squad to win the National Interscholastic Polo Championship. That was followed 4 years later by a college national championship at Colorado State University. Now a giant mural is dedicated to Rosser's accomplishments in his old neighborhood.
Do you still come by and look at it?
All the time. I mean, anyone who comes to visit us from outside of Philly, this is one of our stops. You know, we take everyone to go try a cheesesteak, and then we got to stop past the mural and show it off a little bit.
Today, Rosser has transitioned to the next phase of his life, working successfully as a financial analyst.
So come up here and then going outside.
Back at the stables, the unrelenting Leslie Heiner is still running Work to Ride,
Pay attention.
where her work is still needed in the worst ways.
I used to expect the children to come and bring a lunch. And then, you know, after a couple years, I realized that they don't have stuff to make lunch with. So that's like one of those big things that, you know, the kids won't tell you that they don't have anything in the refrigerator. And so you have to provide that for them.
In the bottom, not much has changed. This past March, Kareem's brother David, the one who first found the stables, was also murdered.
And you still think about him a lot?
Yeah, every day. I mean, it's hard not to think about him, especially, you know, he was murdered just blocks away from where my mom lives. My family's still there. I still hear everything that goes on. I still get phone calls. Regardless of how far I try to distance myself from the bottom, it's always going to be a part of me.
If some little kid is out there watching, whether it's in the bottom or from somewhere else, and he feels trapped and he's watching, he's like, I don't know, Polo though, I mean, what do you tell him?
You know, I mean, do whatever your freaking heart tells you to do, you know, and one of the reasons why I wrote this book is it's bigger than me. You know, I want to inspire kids who look just like me, come from where I come from, and knowing that they can go and dominate a sport that they don't think they belong in.
It's crazy to see that mural in West Philly. So Kareem doesn't get to play polo much anymore, ride much anymore, because he's so focused on his career as a financial analyst, but is heavily involved in a new fundraising effort for Work to Ride. As for Leslie Heiner, she says, I mean, she's been doing it for 26 years now. She says she's going to keep doing it until she's too tired. And I'll tell you, she is still on those kids big time, all the time. And it's serious. If you're not doing well in school, if you're straying off the path, you're not riding, and you're not doing that until you are performing well.
And it's all
from our virtual. So we have actually 2 people here who actually know Mr. Rosser, know Kareem Rosser personally. So I'm going to bring them to the front to speak to you about some of the things they know about Kareem. All right, and this is Mr. and Mrs. Rios.
So hi everyone. So I happen to be friends with Kareem. I know Kareem and his brother really well. What do you guys think of the story? Right? Does it seem tough to play polo? Yeah, it does. Do you guys think you can play polo? No, probably not. Why not? I don't know. I don't like other persons. Just say it out loud. Why do you think you can play polo? Say it. Say that again. Oh, where do you get the horses and stuff from? You know what? If you work hard, so I play polo, but when I was younger, I was much more fit and I played competitively in college. I can promise you, if you're willing to work hard, there's somebody willing to loan you a horse and teach you how to play polo. You don't believe me, right? How many of you know where the best polo players in the world come from? Say it. Where? Oh, Ralph Lauren. No, he's a clothing line, right? Kareem actually models for Ralph Lauren, but Ralph Lauren is a clothing line. A lot of people think the best polo players in the world come from England. They play in front of Queen Elizabeth, right? I can tell you the best player in the world for 16 years, along with his family, came. He actually lives here in California. Came from what country? Yes, yell it out.
Mexico.
Who said that? How do you know that?
I don't know.
What did you say?
Huh?
What did you say?
What did I say?
No, what did you say?
Oh, I said Mexico.
Say it louder.
Mexico.
Own it.
Mexico.
Mexico. What was that? The best collegiate college players and high school players in this country come from? Nope. From, you saw him. Philadelphia. They're young African-American kids from Philadelphia. It wasn't always that way. So I'm going to ask you one more time. Do you guys think you can play polo? Oh, you're so wrong. Heck yeah, you can. Heck yeah, you can. Let me show you what a polo stick looks like. Did you guys think it was this long?
No, it's smart enough to follow. I thought they were a bit shorter.
This one happens to be 53 inches. They come in different sizes, but this is how long you need to have it in order to be able to play polo.
How much does it weigh?
How much does this weigh or the horse? This? I'll let you hold it and I'll hold it. Come on, come on. What does it feel like?
I mean, it's not that heavy.
It's not that heavy? Now lift it above your head. From back from where you were down here again. Lower, lower, there you go. Lift it above your head. Now imagine you're on a horse. Your horse is going up and down side to side. The ball is about the size of a tennis ball. You have to lean over your horse, hang on with your legs so you don't fall off, and swing at that little ball. Do you think you can do it?
No.
I promise you every single one of you can do it because you're young, you're kids, you're fearless, and if you're afraid, with the right relationship with your horse, you guys will be able to play polo. Can you just pull your arm back like this? How does it feel now? All the way back. It's kind of harder, right? So let me tell you a little secret about polo. The best players started playing when they were kids. But polo is a sport you can get into no matter how old you are. You can be 2 years old, you can be 10 years old, you can be 13, you can be 40 years old, you can be 60 years old. Polo doesn't care how old you are. Polo doesn't care what color you are. Polo doesn't care if you're a boy or a girl. Oh, okay, your dogs are very interesting to me. That they just roam around the school. I think it's super cool. Who has some, let me give you some basic information about polo. How many football fields can you fit in one polo field? 4. 4, what else?
The necklace.
Someone in the back. Shoot. Oh, you're closer. 8, 9. 9 football fields if you put them back to back because that's how much space the horses need to have in order to play. How many players on each team?
3, 5.
3, 4. Who said 4? Me. 4. 4 players on each team. Okay, trick question. In polo, can boys and girls play together and against each other?
Yes.
You said yes. You're right. Yes, is right. Can girls be better players than boys? Yes. Yes. Can boys be better players than girls? I'm just going to leave that. Hey, boys.
Good afternoon, everyone. How are y'all doing today? Good, good. You guys enjoy the CBS? Yeah. So I'm excited to be here with you all today. I traveled from Philadelphia a couple of days ago, and I wanted to spend some time here on the West Coast sharing my story and hopefully answering some few questions and then inspiring a few people at the same time. So, you know, I'm sure you all saw the piece and got a little bit of a story and where I grew up. I grew up in West Philadelphia, in one of the toughest neighborhoods in Philadelphia. Where I come from, many kids don't live past the age of 18. You know, growing up in West Philly, it was difficult. I grew up in a household with a single mom. My mom raised 6 of us on welfare. And she worked extremely hard to make sure that we all were able to survive each day. And fortunately, when I was a young boy at 8, I found an organization by the name of Work to Ride. And Work to Ride is a nonprofit that helps inner city kids in Philadelphia that comes from low-income families and underserved communities. And when I was 8, I fell in this staple, but I didn't realize that at the time that this place was going to change my life and give me an opportunity to succeed and do things that I've only ever dreamt of as a kid. Over time, eventually, I started to learn how to ride horses, and I began playing polo when I was 10 years old. I started playing polo when I was 10, and eventually I played polo and got good enough, and I went off to high school where I received a full ride. I went to military school, played polo in high school, and I was a part of the first all-African-American polo team to win a national championship here in the U.S., which is a big deal because polo is a predominantly white sport, and there aren't many black people, but there are also, I want to mention that there are many Latino people, and there's a very famous Mexican polo player named Memo Reseda, who is from the area here, who also played polo. But I was a part of this all-African-American team to go on and win a major championship. And then through my experience in polo, I've been able to travel the world. I've been to over, I want to say, 12 different countries playing polo. I've been to about 42 states playing polo as well. And I just had an incredible ride, literally, both riding a horse and then just through my travels and playing. And I recently wrote a book, which is called Crossing the Line, that details my life and talks about my personal struggles, my family struggles, both my brothers and sisters, and what we've been through to get to where we are today. So I wanted to share my story, and I know you all got a chance to watch the video, but I want to actually spend time having a conversation with you and allowing you to ask questions. We can talk about my personal life, we can talk about polo, we can talk about horses. So I want to spend the time and let you ask some questions, and then we can just have a conversation as a group. So first I want to ask, by raising your hand, how many of you have been on a horse? Okay, that's it. How many of you fallen off a horse before? Wow, that's everyone. Okay, so everyone who's been on the horse have also fallen off a horse. That's good. How many of you got back on after you fell off the horse? Okay. See, now the hands are less hands down, less hands. So how many of you know about the sport of polo? You kind of know about polo? So I'm going to give you a quick background about the sport of polo, and I'm going to open up to you for questions. So there are two different types of polo. You have grass polo, which the field is the size of 9 football fields. So you guys can think about a football field is 100 yards long. So but a polo field is about 9 football fields. And each team has 4 players. You have 2 referees, and each player brings about 12 to 14 horses to a game. So it's a lot of horses, over 100 horses at a game sometimes. And the game has 6 periods, and each period is 7 minutes long. And the object of the game is to score as many goals as you can, and then whichever team has the most goals at the end of the game typically they're the winner. They're declared the winner. But it's also a contact sport. So you can, when you're on a horse, you're riding up to get up to about 30 to 35 miles per hour, running your horse down the field. And you're also allowed to crash into other players. So some people often say that polo is just as dangerous as NASCAR, if not more dangerous than NASCAR. So it's a very dangerous and competitive sport. So when I was 10, I started playing, and immediately became addicted to the sport because it was just something that I never got a chance to experience. And where I grew up as a kid, most kids, tend to lean towards basketball or baseball or football. But I had an opportunity that just changed my life, and horses have been incredible. So I'll talk a little bit more about the game. I have a polo ball in my hand, but I want to open up and let you all ask questions, and we can get into a conversation. Does anyone have any questions about polo or me or where I grew up? Great. You guys mind standing up and ask a question? Yep.
What side do you hit the ball with?
What side? That's a good question. So, what side do you hit the ball with? So, the polo mallet here, another key thing that I forgot to mention to you is that you have to play with your right hand. So, it's a right-handed sport. So, if you're left-handed, you have to figure it out and learn how to play with your right hand. But you hit the ball, you can pretty much hit the ball with any side of the polo mallet that you want to hit the ball with. But the most efficient side to hit the ball with is the flat side of the mallet here. So the flat side is where you can pretty much strike the ball as hard as you can, as well as you can. And sometimes the ball can go up to 100 miles per hour depending on how well you can hit the ball. And it hurts when you get hit with the ball. Black shirt here.
How big is it? Like, is it like soccer size?
So this ball is, so I'll show you the ball. Good question. So this ball here, this is not a real polo ball. I don't know if we have a real polo ball. I know we do. I'm not sure if we can pass it around so that you guys can feel and see what a real polo ball looks like. But it's about probably just a little bigger than a baseball. Yep. Blue shirt.
Have you ever got hit with any polo balls?
I've been hit with a polo ball over a couple hundred times. I've been hit in my face and had my teeth jacked up a little bit. But fortunately, I was able to get that fixed. But it's just like if I don't know if you ever watch hockey. Well, you get hit with a hockey puck in your face, it typically kind of destroys your face a little. I'll go this side. Yes.
How did it feel like when you first started getting into polo? Like, how's the sensation when you play it? Like,
that's a good question. So when I first started riding, believe it or not, I started with a pony, and I would only ride that pony because I was afraid of the bigger horses at the time. And then eventually, unfortunately, my pony passed away, and I started riding bigger horses. Over time, I started to become a little bit more confident in my riding ability. But once I learned how to ride, and I started going a little faster, and then faster over time, it was just an incredible feeling. It was the speed and the power of the horse that you would feel when you're on top of it is something you can only experience when you're riding the horse. But I had an insane adrenaline rush every time I would ride, and whenever I got off one horse, I wanted to get on another horse because it was such an amazing feeling. For sure.
What type of relationship do you have with the horses? Do you rid the same horse all the time? Do you have different horses? And do you have a preference of horses?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, how many of you watched the movie Avatar? The movie Avatar. So pretty much a lot of you. So do you all remember that scene where the Avatar is connecting the hair to the horse's, I guess his mane, if you will. So, believe it or not, it's very similar with humans. We just don't have that ponytail to connect to the horse, but you create this special bond with the horse. And so over time, for me, I'll just give you a quick story. When I was 10 years old, I lost my best friend at the time, and so her mother, her father, and her they're all shot and killed. And when I was a little boy, that was the first time that I really ever experienced death. And my friend Mecca, she and I basically did everything together. And when I was a little boy and I was 10, after I lost my friend, I experienced anxiety and depression as a little boy at 10. And whenever I would go to the stables and I was with my horse, is when I felt free. Is when I felt that I had no worries and there was nothing that was going to defeat me or hurt me when I was with my horse. So when I got on that horse and I started riding, I just felt liberated. And to answer your question about how many horses I've ridden over my lifetime, I would say over more than a few thousand horses. And I just had, over time learned to become a good rider, and my ability to start riding horses and understanding horses has allowed me to pretty much ride any horse whenever and wherever I want, just because of the connections that I built over time.
Piggybacking off of that, so when you practice, when we were practicing, did you have a specific horse that you practice with, and did you have a favorite horse that you competed with?
Yeah, so I would, at the program at Works Ride in Philadelphia, one of the things the founder of the organization, what she would do, is she would assign us horses, and that horse would become our care horse, and this horse that I care for. And eventually, that horse and I would share a bond. That horse would start understanding me, and I would start understanding that horse. I'm sure parents will get this, but you start knowing, what triggers your child, and what, when your child is sick, and when, what makes your child angry. It's the same with the horse. When I'm spending time with that one horse, I know when my horse is having a bad day, or he or she may just not want to go out for a ride because it's just having a bad day, like we normally have bad days. So I would spend time with one horse, but then I would learn how to ride different horses over that time. And when we played high school polo and college polo, I would ride different horses depending on where I was traveling to. So I never traveled with the same horse when I was going to these different parts of the country. So that's why it was really important for me to learn how to ride different horses with different attitudes, and just understanding, when a horse was having a bad time and how do I deal with it.
Kareem, we have some questions from our Zoomers.
Oh, yes.
So, do you want to?
Sure.
I don't have my glasses on, so.
That's okay. What teams have you played with? These have been Instagram. How many rules do they have in polo? So a few questions. So I played on a number of teams. So I played in college. I played at Colorado State University, where I played for 4 years, led our team to 2 national finals and one championship. Any of you guys know what the Heisman Trophy is? All right, so the Heisman Trophy it's awarded to the best football player, college football player at the end of the year, but I won the equivalent of that in polo in college. And then the second part of the question is, I do have an Instagram, and my name, Kareem Rosser. So if you want to follow my Instagram and my journey, it's just my name, which is Kareem Rosser. We'll type it in. And the other part is, how many rules do they have in polo? The rules of polo are complicated, but the rules are, when I say it's probably complicated for a person who hasn't watched the game, but the best way to describe it is the rules are created first for the safety of the horses, and then second for the safety of the players. But if you think about, if you're driving down the highway and you're and you're getting ready to switch lanes or cross lanes, you can't do that without signaling at the car that's in front of you or behind you. So same in polo, when you're running and you're both attacking the ball, you want to make sure that you are typically parallel with each other when you're playing defense and offense without causing accidents. So there's many more rules to that, but that's a very basic way of explaining it there. I'll answer one more question from Zoom, and then I'll get back to the group. What is my favorite horse and why? I've had I'm actually still around. One of my favorite horses, his name is Cholo. I raised Cholo basically since he was a 3-year-old horse, and I trained him to play polo. And Cholo is still around today. He's in Philadelphia teaching other young kids how to play polo as well. So we have another question from the crowd. Purple shirt.
When you're young, how many hours do you dedicate to polo?
Sorry?
When you're young, how many hours do you dedicate to polo?
When I was young, how many hours did I dedicate to polo? I practically lived at the stables when I was a kid. Because when I was a young boy, where I grew up, there was just a lot of violence, a lot of, I would see people dealing drugs, I would see people get hurt all the time. It was just not a great place for me. So I always try to find a better alternative for myself. And the Staples was the better alternative for me. So I was at the Staples almost every day. And one of the things that I had to do as a young boy was I also had to make sure that I kept my grades up and I did well in school, or I was not able to ride. So I spent, I would say over 70, 80 hours a week doing my homework and at the Staples and riding at the same time. Sure.
How do you train a horse for polo?
How do you train a horse for polo? So it's, you simply basically start by, depending on if you're training a horse from scratch, meaning a horse is a baby and you start riding the horse, and it's something what you do, what they call, at least when you first get on the horse, is you break the horse. We literally don't break the horse, but you're teaching the horse how to turn left and turn right. But that all happens by you get on, the horse learns, what it means to have body weight on them. And then there are a lot of pressure points on horses throughout the horse's bodies. And then when you're riding, you ride a lot with your legs and your hands. So those are the key pressure points. And you're signaling the horse when you pull the horse left side of its mouth, you're telling the horse to turn right. Or if you pull the left side of the opposite side, you're telling the horse to turn that direction. And the same with your legs. You use your legs to cue the horse to move forward, and then you kind of sit down to cue the horse to stop. So these are all different pressure points that you're starting to use, or you start using to teach the horse to move around. Ellie hat in the back. Sorry? Did I have a good mom and dad?
No, a good mom.
Did you and your dad and mom and dad each other had a good mom that works together and helping each other and stuff?
I have to come over here. Sorry, I'm having a hard time. But did I have a good mom with my mom and dad? And great question. So I didn't have my dad in my life, unfortunately. My dad, when I was a kid, was in and out of prison, and he also was an alcoholic. My mom and I have an incredible bond. My mom, she raised 6 kids by herself, and she had my oldest brother when she was 14 years old. She was 14 when she had her first child. And then by 30, she had 6 children. And she is probably one of the strongest women that I know. Just her resilience and some of the things that she's been through, and her positive attitude through all of the loss and all the struggles that she dealt with as a young mom, just constantly motivated me as a kid. So my mom spent a lot of time with us to make sure that we all went on to high school, and for us all going to college. Because my mom, she unfortunately just has a middle school education. So my mom stopped at middle school because she spent time raising kids as a young teenager. And she did not want that life for us. She wanted us to go on and succeed. So what we did, my brothers and sisters and I, we found an alternative, and that was horses. We used horses as a way out, as a way to escape the poverty and all of the violence and stuff that we were unfortunately born into. But we did not let that stop us from going and moving forward and finding a way out. I have an incredible bond with my mom, and she's one special person in my life. Yes.
What's the best type of
What's the best type of horse for polo? So the best type of horse for polo are typically thoroughbreds. So thoroughbreds are horses that are used for racing, and they typically have a very long endurance. They can last long. So during a polo match, as I mentioned, there are 6 periods, but sometimes you'll use about 2 horses in a period because they're trying to cover distances of, a 9-yard field, but they're just running back and forth nonstop. Black lady here. What's the oldest horse? What? What's the oldest horse I rode? The oldest horse I rode was probably, I want to say 25, 26.
What's the dress attire like for polo?
Right, that's a great question. What's the dress attire for polo? So typically, polo players wear white jeans for the game and a polo shirt, so a collared shirt, and a pair of boots. And then you have something that's called knee guards that protect your knees. And then sometimes you can wear spurs, you have gloves, you have a helmet, and then you have some eye protection.
There's another question over Zoom.
Yes.
And it has to do with you being a black man. So the question was, I'm sorry. Oh, it says, what were your struggles as a black man playing polo?
What were my struggles as a black man playing polo? That's a great question. So, as I mentioned before, polo is a predominantly white sport. So there are a lot of wealthy or white people in the sport of polo. And, for me and my siblings, being the only people of color, being very few people of color in the sport, was very intimidating at times. But we would go places and we would look different. We did the intimidating part by just kind of immersing ourselves into the sport and really trying to understand the game and understand the horses. So over time, we eventually just let the game speak for ourselves and really didn't pay attention to the fact that we paid attention to the fact that we were the only black people here, but we didn't let that stop us from pursuing our greater goal, which was winning championships. Yes. What's the fastest ball I've hit?
How fast have you hit the ball?
That's it. So what's the fastest I've hit the ball? I've never tracked the speed of the ball, but I've hit a ball over 150 yards, 200 yards before. White shirt. What's the worst injury I had? So fortunately, I've not had any bad injuries. I broke my thumb before, but I've had several horses fall on top of me during the game, but each time I was able to walk away. Back left.
How would you rate polo 1 out of 10?
Sorry?
How would you rate it 1 out of 10?
Polo? How would I rate polo 1 out of 10?
Playing polo and why?
What's my favorite part about playing polo and why? I think one of my favorite parts is having a horse as a partner. There aren't many sports where you include animals in the game. So the horse themselves are considered athletes. So, you see basketball players and football players who are in the gym, they're jogging, they're training every day. You do the same thing with your horses. Your horses are going out for exercise multiple times a day. They have very strict diets. They have trainers. They have vets who are looking after them. So basically, all the care and work you would see a normal athlete that would go into a normal athlete, the same thing happens to horses. LA shirt. Sorry?
How do you score in polo?
How do you score in polo? Great question. So in polo, you have 2 goals on each end, and every time a player scores, the team swaps sides. But you're hitting the polo ball into 2 goalposts that are upright, and the goalposts are about 20, maybe I want to say about 14 to 20 feet apart on the exact measurements. But as long as the ball is in between the two uprights, doesn't matter how hard or how high the ball is, it's considered a goal at 1 point. Yes, sir, in the back.
Why is it that you must be a right-hand swinger in polo?
Yeah, why do you have to be a right-hand swinger in polo? Great question. So the rules are based around again the horses and players' safety and how one can foul another player, it would be at a disadvantage to a person who's swinging left versus a person who's swinging right. And the fact that, you know, your right hand is the dominant hand, it ends up working out for most people because most people are right-handed. Yes, ma'am.
Can you tell us a little bit about your modeling career? Like, how did you get started with Ralph Lauren? And is that an ongoing partnership, or was it a one-time thing?
Yeah, so, you know, fortunately, you know, I've been able to partner with Ralph Lauren, and they have been huge supporters of myself and the Work to Ride program in Philadelphia. So I've been able to model for them for the last couple of years. And, you know, we now have billboards in New York City and other places across the country. And, you know, this is an ongoing relationship. So this is hopefully something that we're going to continue to work on for many years to come. Yes, sir. Perfect.
Who was your best teammate and why?
Who's my best teammate and why? I would say my younger brother was my best teammate. He and I, you know, we obviously grew up together, we grew up in the same house, but we always understood each other. We understood how to work together as teammates. We've been through some tough, you know, life lessons together. You know, he's probably one of the most resilient people that I know. Yeah, sure. What's that?
What caught your attention on the sport?
What caught my attention on the sport? Great question. The first thing is the horses. The horses were a huge part of why I wanted to play polo. It kept me connected with all the horses that I've been riding over the years. Appreciate it. How many horses have I trained? I would say over a couple hundred horses. That's a really good question, a great observation. Why are the sticks different sizes? So this stick right here that I have in my right hand is called a foot mallet. So this is just a stick you use when you're kind of hanging around the house or hanging around the field or the barn, where you can just kind of practice your swing here. And this, you can, you know, use this as practice. And then the longer stick here, which varies in size as well. It all depends on the sheer size of your horse. So each horse is a different size, and the stick is a different size, so that you're able to hit the ball alongside of the horse. So the longer stick is used for when you're practicing on the horse, and then the shorter stick, which is called a foot mallet, is used when you're practicing on foot. Yeah, we can pass it. Let's pass both of them around. See it. Back there, far back there. What is a polo stick? What is the most funniest moment I've had playing polo? So I think so. Whenever I would fall off or we would see someone else fall off, we always found it funny unless someone got really hurt. I would say the funniest time was when my brother and I were getting ready to go out onto the practice field, and I was riding a very young horse. And the young horses typically are startled easily, and sometimes they buck. So a bucking horse is what, you know, they lift their hind end and it goes forward. And my brother and I were walking, and my brother took the polo mallet, knowing that my horse was young and afraid, and put it under my horse's belly and caused my horse to buck, and I probably flew, I don't know, 15 feet in the air. Yeah. What is the most ridiculous moment I had in one of my games? I would probably say scoring and winning goal for the other team. Yes, next question. Have I ever been made fun of? What are my goals and dreams? I've definitely been made fun of a number of times. You know, it's either, you know, sometimes by the way I look or the way I ride, but I never let that affect me. And what are my goals and dreams? My goal is to one day hopefully inspire and help as many young kids who come from similar backgrounds that myself and some of the kids that I grew up with in Philly. And hopefully I can introduce them to the sport of polo, get them involved, or even just get on the horse. A dream of mine is to even see either one or two of you in this auditorium here, or this gymnasium, pick up the sport of polo, or even pick up riding and go do something great with your lives. Back red shorts. What would happen if you use your left hand during polo? You would probably most likely be disqualified. White shirt, neck trigger.
What's your greatest opponent you like when you pass?
What's my greatest what?
Opponent.
What is my greatest opponent?
Like,
I got you gotta take the mask off.
greatest opponent in sport. Like,
Greatest opponent.
My greatest opponent in sport? My greatest opponent, I think it was probably the team that probably two of the teams I faced in the national championship finals in high school and college were some of the greatest opponents that we played against. Because they were typically the teams that were, and they were always in the finals every year. So once we finally got there, it was nice to be able to defeat them. Great shirt. What if your game ends in a tie? So games never really end in a tie. You have the golden goal rule, which if you know soccer, it's the first person who scores, or sometimes you go into a penalty shootout, which would basically be similar to people shooting free throws, and the first person who misses the free throw loses. Yes. What is the stick made out of? So what is the polo made out of? It's actually made out of a special cane that comes from Asia. It's similar to bamboo, but it's not bamboo because it's very strong and can take, it can handle people hooking or checking into each other, as well as hitting the ball really hard. Yes. How much do you get paid playing polo? It varies. It all depends on, what sort of tournament you're playing in, what team you're playing on. But some of the top players in the world can make up to a couple $1 million a year. What's that? So, am I a top player? I was a top player when I was in college and in high school. I'm no longer a top player because I'm not actively playing as much as I used to. Yes?
how did you first find the stable when you started playing polo?
How did I first find the stable when I started playing polo? So my two older brothers, David and Jabbar, were actually out on a bike ride, and they went after if we should invest in a new company. Is this company worth, putting $1 million or $100,000 in? And what is it going to look like 5 years from now? Will our investment grow or appreciate? Appreciate and growing is sort of the same thing. And what does that look like? So as you guys get older, you start learning a little bit more about money management and opening up bank accounts, and how do you manage and something that's called reconciling your checkbooks and balancing your checkbooks. Right now that may not mean anything to you, but you'll probably remember this conversation and say, oh, that's what that meant. Yes.
What countries have you played in? What's your favorite country to visit? And do you speak Spanish?
Okay, good question. So what countries have I played in, and what is my favorite country to play in, and do I speak Spanish? So great. So I have played polo in China. I've been to play polo in England. I've played polo in Argentina. I played polo in Nigeria. Where else have I been? I played polo in 42 states, pretty much here. And then my favorite country that I visited and played polo is, I would say, Nigeria. Nigeria was a really cool experience, understanding the culture, learning about the people there and their struggles and what they're going through. It was just a really, really good time. I played polo there over 5 times. And do I speak Spanish? I comprehend Spanish better than I speak Spanish. Who hasn't asked a question? Well, you, sir. How long is the season in polo? So the cool thing about polo is really it never stops. So polo players follow the warm weather. So you typically, right now players are playing in Santa Barbara, California, but during December through April, a lot of the best players in the world travel down to West Palm Beach, Florida, and they play polo there because it's warm. So players typically follow wherever warm weather is. And then I want to say from October through December, a lot of players go to Argentina and play as well. The people typically follow the warm weather as a polo player. Let's see, what's that? You start back. The most I've scored in a game, the most goals I actually scored in a game was 19. Well, so I hasn't asked the question yet. I want to make sure I get everyone who hasn't asked. Okay, go ahead. What's that? Is it hard to control the ball while the horses are going fast? Yes, it is a difficult thing to do when you're trying to control your horse, running, at 30 miles per hour, and then also, keeping track of that little ball that's on the ground. But over time, like anything, practice, repetition, you'll eventually learn how to apply speed. How long is the game? So the game is, like I said, it's 6 periods. Each period is 7 minutes long, but a game can go between an hour and a half and 2 hours. Between all the stoppage and all the halftime. Yes, sir. Do I play any other sports in polo? Yes, I played a lot of sports. In high school, I played soccer, lacrosse, baseball, swam, I played tennis. One of my favorite sports aside from polo was lacrosse. I was a very good lacrosse player and had opportunities to play in college as well. Okay. Any other questions? Yes? My favorite memory with my best friend? So what's my favorite memory with my best friend playing polo? Wow. I just think, believe it or not, all my favorite memories of Mecca and I playing polo was when she was just beating up on me and making me a better player. Because I was always trying to be as good as she was, and she was probably one of the toughest women that I know too. Because it was hard playing against a bunch of boys, and she was pretty much better than everyone. Yes? What's that? If you hit someone with a foul, would it be considered a foul? Absolutely. If it's not intentional, sometimes you can get away with it, but if you intentionally hit someone, most likely you're going to get kicked out of the game. Yes, sir?
What did your mom think about you playing polo?
What did my mom think about me playing polo? My mom loved the fact that I played polo, that we played polo, my siblings and I. She was very excited about the fact that we were not, running the streets and finding trouble and being in trouble, and that we were doing positive things outside of the home. So she was very supportive and also gave her a peace of mind knowing that we were out bettering our lives. Yes, sir. How fast has my horse gone? So, about a month and a half ago, for the first time, I actually rode a thoroughbred on the racetrack, and I got a chance to, have a horse run up to about 30 miles per hour, which was really fast and fun. Yes.
How long is it called a match or a game? How long?
Yeah, so polo, call it a polo match or a polo game, but a polo game match can last up to an hour and a half to 2 hours. Yes. Yeah. So if a horse goes in a diet. Sorry?
Okay, if the horse
your optimum weight?
Right, so if a horse goes on a diet, what does a horse eat? So I have to go on a diet, what do I eat? And then what is the optimum weight? So, like most athletes, you want to watch your diet and your weight. I spend a lot of time eating hay. Just kidding, I didn't do that. So just as if I was, a professional football player, or basketball player, or any professional athlete, I watch my dieting when I eat, and I try to exercise as much as I can. And same with the horses. The horses are out exercising multiple times a day, and their grain rations and hay rations that are given each day is monitored. Sometimes, if you ever walk past a horse that is in season or that's playing polo, they'll often wear muzzles because the horses they just like to graze and want to eat all the time whenever they can. So they'll start nibbling the shavings in their stalls or whatever it is that they can start biting on. But they're fed really well. They're fed so that their body weight is optimal and kind of allows them to last the season.
Okay, so can we take a minute and say thank you to Kareem, and then we're going to do something. So.
And then while Kareem is getting ready, let me have your attention. While Kareem is getting ready to take a picture with you guys, I have a question we have media here from Spectrum Television wanted me to ask you all a question about, Kareem started out where he said how many have ridden horses, and there were quite a few of you who raised your hand. So, of those of you that said you've ridden a horse, how many of you are actually interested or have kind of equestrian type of riding experience? Okay, so Jabin, is there anyone else? Ozzy, anyone else? Okay, so we have a few. Okay, so that was the general question, and then I think we'll have a follow-up with you guys and Kareem afterwards, okay?
So we're going to take a couple of pictures real quick, but we're not going to move because Kareem took his mask off. So stay right there. First picture, just everybody make sure if you can see me, I can probably see you. Ready, set? Okay, next one. Let's just all raise our hands or point at Kareem.
If you have clips on, take them off so we can try and get better here. Aries, take your hood off, Aries. Aries. And Martin.
So on the count of three, everybody raise your hands. Both hands. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Woohoo! Cool. Thanks. That's the little thing. Thank you, everyone.
A lot of our field trips that we've gone to over the years since the school has been open has been because of Miss Winnie's efforts and her connection to the community, and she is relentless, and she is one who's like, Miss Means, get these kids to this place or that place, and it's all paid for, just get them there. So I just want to let you know that this is Miss Winnie who helped.
Kareem, and I'm surprised. I know how bright you are. But one question you did not ask him is, number one, when is he coming back? Number two, if there's polo here, can we take a field trip out so you can see it? Y'all didn't ask that question? I can't believe you missed that question.
I think we can make that happen.
Did you hear that? That means is we will have his schedule, and the other thing is I want him to leave how his whatever you call it, so you can talk to him on Zoom or whatever that thing is that you guys do. Yeah. Okay. I don't have those words. Okay, so that we can continue to ask questions as we prepare for this trip that's coming, right? Okay. That doesn't mean it's going to take a long time, right?
It's not going to take a long time.
Okay. All right. So therefore, then you will be able to share with the other members of the school so that we can already get in preparation mode, and then so I can get whatever money and whatever I need so that you guys can go and actually see a field, actually see the horses. How many of you went to Cavalier? Yes, you did. Yeah. Cavalier was a trip. Cavalier was, we went and we got to see the horses in the back, okay? The one thing that it was very interesting to me is that just listening to him, the horses are like children. They're just like you. They think, they move. When they don't feel good, they say no. When they feel all right, they act like you. So you're dealing with an intelligent animal, very, very intelligent animal. And so the rider on the back, who controls the animal, he's got to think like they think. So having him here today, didn't it give you a lot of thought?
Yes.
That means that you're going to give me a lot of questions about things you want to do, right? So we can engage and learn more about this sport that you're going to get to see, because he's going to come back and we're going to go see it, right?
Yes. We'll make it happen.
All right.
Let's